Did the Fed make a mistake in raising 25 basis points? Let's bring in former Fed Vice Chair Alan Blinder, currently a professor at Princeton. He says they didn't need to do it. Alan, is that because you think the banks are potentially in more trouble than the Fed seems willing to admit?
No, I think it's because they're in the same kind of trouble that the Fed is willing to admit. I want to emphasize when I say a mistake, it's a small mistake. It's 25 basis points. It's not the end of the world.
So
but
why is it a mistake if it's so small?
Yeah, I would say if you listen to the words that Jay Powell uttered in his press conference or just read the statement, they talked about the cloud of uncertainty created by this event or series of events. Powell talked about the notion that tighter credit coming from the banks is a kind of a substitute for tightening monetary policy. All of that I agreed with 100%. And to me, it added up to a case for a pause. We got this tremendous uncertainty. Let's let it resolve a little and see how bad or not so bad this turns out to be.
It seems like, to use a metaphor here, it's one thing if you're flying a plane and trying to keep it from going too fast and you're in control of the braking. It's another if the engines are going out, which I guess is the concern if credit tightens up in the economy. Is that the issue here, is that we don't know to what degree the economy is going to slow from the expected slowdown in availability of credit?
Exactly that. We know the direction. This is going to put a crimp into the credit granting mechanism. It could be a small crimp that you hardly notice. It could be a big crimp. We don't know the answer to that, and therefore we don't know how much of a slowdown this is going to cause, and that's the case for pausing. Just wait and let's see a little bit.
All right, the Fed balance sheet, is it important to watch in this case? You agree this is not a contradiction to be tightening while increasing, at least temporarily, the balance sheet?
Mostly, but not quite as much as Steve agreed. Look, if the Fed wants to ease credit conditions, the normal thing to do is to buy assets. That's what quantitative easing was all about. But another thing it can do is lend money to banks, which it normally does only in very small volume. But in meeting this emergency, it's lending also in peculiar ways, as Steve pointed, but lending in very large volume. And that's intended very clearly to stave off further echoes of contagion coming from Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. So we know why the Fed is doing it. I wouldn't call it a contradiction, but it is an easing of credit to prevent let's put it this way, it is an easing of credit by the Fed to try to prevent or forestall a tightening of credit by the banking system.
Okay, I get that. So tell me about when we get to see what normal is becoming for this economy. Is it late Q3? Is it Q4? Do we have to wait to hear the guidance at some point to get to see how businesses are even changing their positioning and maybe even their hiring practices in this economic reality?
It'll be a while, as you suggest, but I think we'll know a lot in another month, say. What we know in another month? How many banks ran into the same wall or a similar wall as Silicon Valley and Signature and a few others? Was it just a handful in total? Or was it 10 or 30 or 50 or, God forbid, 100? I think we'll know that a lot faster than the third quarter.
And you think there's still that chance? 50 or even 100?
I don't think it's going to be 100. I would bet against that. But I don't know. And it makes a big difference if it's just 5 or 6 versus 30 or 40. That makes a big difference in the impact on the economy. And I certainly don't know that. And I don't think the Fed knows that either at this stage. They're trying to keep it as low as possible.
Certainly. A sober and experienced look from Alan Blinder. Thank you.